All right, welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today, we're gonna do basically a second preview, do some updates on injuries. The second injury report has come out on the SEC website, so if you guys haven't looked at it, follow along with us while we're talking about it in this video. And then score predictions at the end. We did not do that in our last video, saving it for this one. We've actually seen kind of a crazy one earlier today, so we might bring that one up. So before we get into everything, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Follow everything in the description down below. So the injury report, second injury report, has been released on the SEC website. The first one had David Stone listed, which was the fact that he was listed at all was a surprise, probably like in practice injury because he hasn't been on the field very much. But he was listed as probable. Now he's completely off. He'll be active for this weekend's game against South Carolina. The good news and why we're making this video is that, well, I guess it's not for sure good news, but it's better news than we had last week. Deion Burks is still listed as questionable as of Thursday night, which going back to a week ago, he was already considered out. And Brent Venables said in his press conference that Deion was doing everything he possibly could, paraphrasing there, to get on the field this week. Brandon, what would Deion Burks coming back mean to this team? And does it really help this offense that much?
What he said, he's trying to defy all the odds, I think was his exact quote, something along those lines. I mean, Deion Burks coming back definitely wouldn't hurt, right? I mean, it can't get worse than it was against Texas a week ago. So him being back is only going to help. He's with what we've played so far at receiver this year, with considering Nick Anderson only played 2 snaps and Drell probably only 5 or 6 snaps or whatever in the first game. Can't remember what his exact snap count. Deion Burks has been your best receiver that you've had this season. He should open the passing game up slightly because, I mean, the offensive line is still going to be the offensive line. Hopefully they can, protect a little bit longer than they did against Texas. But if you can protect a little bit, I mean, Deion Burks should open up a little bit. But again, you can't get worse. So I mean, I think anybody back is going to help. You do wonder. I'm very curious this week on so many things that we heard this week. You know how Brent Venables said he's not opposed to a 2-quarterback system. I don't like it at all. I think you have to stick with one guy, and because the 2 QB system doesn't let anybody get into any sort of rhythm. Doesn't let any. I'm not a huge fan of it. If it works, it works. I'm all for it, but I'm just generally not a big fan of it. I'm curious to see if Jackson Arnold gets in the game. If that was like a little bit of a foreshadowing type approach. If Hawk, is struggling for whatever reason, whether it be the offensive line, the receivers not being open, him just missing, whatever. We'll see. If Burks is back, you're curious to see what, if any, chemistry that Hawkins has with Burks. You have to wonder how much he was able to practice with some of those guys, because all fall camp, all summer, he was probably running with the 2s, and Jackson was running with the 1s. So you have to wonder if they're familiar with each other at all. A lot of question marks going into this week for Oklahoma's offense.
A lot of question marks for sure. I think you said it can't get any worse, which is true. I think statistically we are either one of the worst, if not the worst, offense in the country. There's not a lot of room between the bottom and where Oklahoma's offense is right now. But can it get better is the question, especially in such a short amount of time. As you mentioned, the Texas game was by far the worst performance they've had all season. Then they haven't had good performances offensively really this season. It's worse than the Tennessee performance, not just because of the scoreboard, but just how it looked. It was significantly worse. Turnovers were still a problem. I think the run game can become more effective. Again, we mentioned it in the post-game, the recap video. Taylor Tatum is by far the best running back this team has right now. And you just have to live with the mistakes that he makes, because they are freshman mistakes, regardless of what I think fans and I think Gabe Eichert pointed out, like he misses blocking assignments, which is true, but when he's on the field to actually run the ball, he's the best one you've got out of the trio right now. Gavin Sawchuk has not looked like the Gavin Sawchuk we all expected him to be. Javonte Barnes is good, but he doesn't create as many explosive plays as Taylor Tatum does, so he's more of a thumper, the guy that you want to get in there to get you 3 or 4 yards and situational guy. So I know that it's frustrating and people want perfection on the field, but with Taylor Tatum, I think you just live with it. Hope that he improves as the weeks go on. Mike Hawkins, that quarterback, it's becoming a dilemma middle of the season, which is not ideal. I think it's a dilemma also because just in the public eye, he hasn't really performed any better than Jackson Arnold did during his tenure. The biggest difference is Jackson put the ball in jeopardy, and that shows with his interception numbers, but it's because he was throwing it down the field versus Mike's first reaction seemingly isn't to throw it. It's definitely not down the field because I think we've created or had less opportunities at explosive plays with him on the field, at least in the passing game, but he does have a better running ability. So it's kind of a pick your poison right now. I think there's still a lot to be desired with how the offense is schemed, the play calling. That's just really not to beat a dead horse. Everyone knows. Everyone probably has the same opinion of Latrell and Finley at this point. They're coaching for their jobs, and if they can't figure something out this week with potentially their number one receiver back, then the issues will just get worse for them, and there's not really much of a saving grace if it doesn't go their way this week.
I think the fans clamoring for Jackson Arnold is because second half, you saw a little bit of flash from Hawkins in that Tennessee game, kind of gave us some juice, gave us some spark. But, the best half of football, the best we've looked at as a unit overall at this season was that first half game against Tulane. There's no doubt about it. The offense was humming. I think, 3 out of 5 drives or 4 out of 5 drives, something in that first half they ended up scoring on. They missed out on a scoring opportunity on one of them because they took a delay game. And Jackson was the quarterback for that first half, and he looked great. He looked like the guy that we were thinking about getting. The problem is eventually he never really expanded the passing game. He was definitely keeping the defense honest in the first half with his running ability. He was running wild, and he was and the defense had to account for that. But as far as passing the ball goes, he wasn't really taking any shots downfield in that game, and Tulane was able to lock in on that in the second half, and then we looked like the offense that we had out against Houston the week prior, which wasn't great. But I think a lot of the we want Jackson stuff back. No one's really, it's not a Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler situation quite to that level yet. But there are fans who want Jackson now. And I think a lot of the reason is because of stuff like that. I think we were at the best we've seen us look this season. What was with Arnold in there, and it's the first half against Tulane. But then he was horrible in the first half against Tennessee, and Hawkins brought us back. It's like I said, there's so many question marks. I don't really know. Do you think, like, if I were to ask you, could you tell me right now who is Oklahoma better off with Michael Hawkins or Jackson Arnold?
That's why I don't think there's a right answer. Like, you got to pick your poison. Like, do you bring back in the guy that everyone was hoping for in Jackson Arnold and give him another chance? I think the one saving grace for him versus what Mike has, if Mike has a bad first half, I think you can give Jackson an opportunity in the second half, because would be the first time that he would have a fully healthy offensive line in front of him. He didn't have that throughout the first 3.5 games he played this season. Last year when he had a decent offensive line, really just the Arizona game. Yes, picks were still a problem. I'm not going to pretend that wasn't a thing. But he was also able to get the ball out. If he can get if we can get the Jackson Arnold of the Arizona game, even with the mistakes, I think the offense looks much better because then it opens things up a little bit. Maybe you can rely a little bit more on the run game because that could open up some holes. Obviously, you want to limit the mistakes that he makes, but it's much better to throw for 300 yards and some touchdowns and get a couple picks in there than not even throw for 100. And you got fumbles, turnovers. The run game is just limited completely because, as we've talked about all season, like the defense just has to defend the first 10 yards because the offense is not, for whatever reason, it's either not schemed up to utilize these players correctly, or the quarterbacks don't have enough time, or they're not looking down the field. Nothing is really going past the sticks or 10 yards if they're any closer than, if it's not 1st and 10, it's, and then they can't recover from mistakes, really. So that's another thing. Like the mentality just doesn't, there's no leader on the offense when you look at it. There's not a guy that you can be like, all right, he's going to be the one to make the play. That's not the quarterback right now. There's no running back that does it. There's no wide receiver that does it. I mean, the offensive line, you can have a vocal leader. I just don't know how much that would affect a unit that has been struggling so much. And the coach definitely doesn't seem to be the leader right now for that side of the ball.
Yeah, no, see, I mean, I agree that Jackson hasn't had a fully healthy, or a unit that's played together for more than one game so far this season, and right now the current lineup has played. They're going on game 3 now together, which is, they should be able to build some sort of continuity and become a little bit better because of that. But I mean, the offensive line that played against Texas was just as bad as the line that he was playing with all season. I mean, it was a constant pressure on Hawkins from the snap, and there was just no chance. The thing that's interesting about that JA game is, he threw for 366 yards in that Arizona Bowl game, and we were all like, man, this is going to be fun. Yeah, because the mistakes were there. I get it, but I mean, he threw for 366. You had Nick Anderson out there. You had Brennan Thompson, but with the I can't remember the exact receiving lineup that we played in that game. Did we have any holdouts for that game?
No, it's basically the same. Oh, I mean, Drake Stoops is the only one that's different from the bowl game than this year.
Yeah, I mean, so he threw for 366 in that game, but that one we had a decent line. Run game was decent. It seems like right now it's going to take us 5 games to get 366 passing yards, and he did that. He did it in 1. And the thing that sucks, or that's weird, and this is going to sound like me coming to the defense of Seth Luttrell, and I don't mean it for it to, but I mean it's the truth. Is he was the play caller in that bowl game too. So that's the part that makes me wonder a little bit. Is it just these receivers being young and not running good routes, not getting open, and the quarterback has nowhere to go? Is it the offensive line being that bad? Is the product on the field right now so horrible that no matter who's calling plays, he's screwed? Or is it Seth Luttrell forgot everything that he had going for him in that Arizona Bowl game? Completely lost all creativity, completely lost all whatever, the step on your throat to attack, to do anything. There's just mega problem. But the thing Luttrell was the play caller in that Arizona Bowl game where we threw for almost 400 yards in his first start. And it's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 6 games to try to get back to that. Not really. He's got 2 games to try to get back to that. I think if he does not look anywhere near good now in this weekend's game against South Carolina, or in next weekend's game at Oxford playing Ole Miss, I don't know what he could do to possibly save his job. Even if they manage to win 6 games, it just doesn't seem very likely if you can't put a competent product. I
feel like he's still got games. I feel like he's still got the 6 games because, I mean, even hypothetically speaking, if you drop these next 2 games, you're 4-4. You win the main game, you're 5-4. And then say he somehow after the main game gets everything to click. Say Jalil Farouk comes back, Deion Burks is back, whatever. You just say those 2 are back. Let's say the offensive line finally starts to look like an offensive line. and you close out the final 3 games strong, and you're scoring 28 points a game, 29, 30 points a game, even, which sounds ridiculous right now. But let's say you drop these next 2, you win Maine, and then after that Maine game, it just somehow clicks for the final 3, and you go 8-4. In those last 3 games, you finally show signs of life. You get some guys back, and it looks like a totally different offense. Does that save his job? I kind of think it would.
I don't think so, but I guess that's obviously like speculation. There's a lot of things that Brent Venables will have to consider come season end. If whatever scenario ends up happening, if he somehow manages to put a good product on the field on the offensive side and they win 4 out of the next 6, or even 5, wishful thinking, but if they go on a bit of a run and the season is somehow saved,
I mean, if you go 5 out of the next 6, you're 9-3. That's definitely a season saved.
But if he doesn't, if he goes 3 for 3, and I think 7 games is kind of like you really got to look at what he did and assess, like, is it worth bringing him back, or do you just, you're more than likely, I think if you fire him, you're going to give the offensive coordinator that you bring in just full control of the staff, regardless of what happens, just because you need to have just fresh everything. Unless it's like, I don't know. I think at that point, it might be Emmett Jones I would get. If there's an internal hire, it's probably Emmett Jones, because he's the one that's seemingly like climbing up the ranks and trying to move to a head coaching position sooner rather than later on the offensive side. Not really any of the other coordinators on that side of the ball are really moving.
Yeah, I think Emmett Jones' name would make sense internally, but I think after the first 2 years of his coaching career, having Jeff Levy, and again, people have their things, their qualms about Jeff Levy, and he wasn't always perfect. I think he called 2 of the worst games I've ever seen in my life in the 2 games we lost last year. But he was also brilliant sometimes. That Texas game, brilliant. I think that was the best game plan I've ever seen. So he was all over the place, but pretty consistent for the most part. He wasn't always super high, wasn't always super low, but he was always at least pretty good at scoring points or doing something. But I think going for your first 2 years as a head coach, having that guy, and then this year, and I get the injuries, that does suck, but you can't have a product that is this bad at Oklahoma in the SEC with, everyone's eyes are on you anyway, because it's your first year in the SEC, coming off a big season. You have high hopes going into the year, and this is the product on the field. The outside looking in, they don't give a shit about the injuries. They don't even look at it. They probably 90% of the casual fans that exist don't even know that we're as hurt as we are. They just think Oklahoma forgot how to play football all of a sudden, and that is the way it looks. And there's a lot of things factored into that. If you had to do like a pie chart of it, it's probably 45% injuries, 55% Seth Luttrell being a pussy this year, or whatever. Something like that is. I don't know the best way to say it. That's probably how you break it down. But Saturday's is your first chance. I mean, you can't possibly be worse than 34-3. I think at this point, unless you're completely living under a rock, because I get that coaches, players, they're not on social media like we are. They're not listening to the outside noise like fans do. But again, unless you live under a complete rock, if you're Seth Luttrell, you somehow, some way, you know that everybody is calling for your job right now. And I feel like obviously fans, and we don't make decisions in personnel or rosters or whatever. But and I think when there's smoke, there's fire. And when everybody in the fucking planet and their dog and their mom is calling for somebody to get fired, I think that puts a lot of internal pressure on a program. And essentially you kind of can force somebody out if everybody turns on somebody. So, I mean, I think you have to, I bet you he feels a little bit of it, and you're coming off a 3-point performance. Can't get worse. I think maybe we finally see him take some shots. Maybe we finally see, I'd love to see first play of the game. Let's do a play action pass and just throw a ball 70 yards. Who gives? I don't give a shit if it's picked off and ran back for 6 points. I think it would be I just want to see, just throw the ball deep. And then, then I think if you do that, South Carolina, their defensive coordinator, their defensive backs, they might actually shit their pants. They'll be like, we have not seen this on film one time anywhere. You'd have to go back to last season to see stuff like this. So it's a great opportunity to catch somebody off guard. It's a great opportunity to hit a big play on the first snap of the game, maybe get you a touchdown. You score more than you did last week, and then it would be exciting. I feel like why not just play fake, throw the ball as far as you can on the first snap, and live with whatever the result is.
I hope you're right, and honestly, I'm with you. If it gets picked off, it gets picked off. But at least you gave it a shot, because at this point, that is all you can ask for. We've seen maybe a handful of downfield throws, and most of them haven't worked out really. Just the one to JJ Hester that I can recall. So might as well give it another try. All right. Before we wrap up the video, score prediction. Brandon, how do you think this game ends up for the Sooners on the scoreboard?
I told you when we were about to record the video earlier this week. I think this was going to be the first week that I was going to pick against Oklahoma and put my homerness aside, put my sunshine pumping aside. As the week has gone on, as we're getting closer to Saturday now, I've kind of flip-flopped on that. I think I'm back on the Oklahoma side. Last I checked it, so we're a 1.5-point favorite. I don't know how, but it is what it is. I think South Carolina is a very wishy-washy type program. I think they can look great. They can look awful. I think, they took LSU right to the end. They took Alabama right to the end. They got the shit kicked out of them by Ole Miss. Did Kentucky beat the hell out of them, or did they beat the hell out of Kentucky?
They beat the hell out of Kentucky.
Yeah, so
but they struggled against Old Dominion to open the season.
They only beat Old Dominion because Old Dominion turned the ball over twice on their own 10. So they're a very weird program. You don't know who you're going to see, what you're going to get. I like to think Oklahoma comes out with a little bit of passion, a little bit of we got to do something. We just got fucking embarrassed in a rivalry game with all the eyes on us. Hopefully, we come out with a little bit of fire because of that. I'm going to pick Oklahoma to win an ugly, ugly game. Maybe a defensive touchdown, maybe defense sets up some scores, maybe we get a special team touchdown, something like that. But I'm going to go like 23-17 Oklahoma.
Yeah, the defense has to play the perfect game here, and really for the rest of the season. If this is the offense, if the offense doesn't improve at all, they have to play the perfect game for the next 6 games. Ole Miss beat South Carolina 27-3. I have very little hope that we can score 27 points, but I'm confident enough in this defense that I think they could hold them to 6 or 3, because the South Carolina offense, they can be dangerous, but they also make mistakes. They give up the ball, and Oklahoma's pretty good at creating turnovers. So my score prediction is going to be 17-6 in Oklahoma's favor, and that's like ideal world. I think realistically, it might be like, if we have a good defensive showing, not perfect, and the offense looks just a little bit better, like 13-17.
You can have an Auburn-like game where the offense scores 2 touchdowns and you get a pick 6 and then 2 field goals. You scored 27 points against Auburn. It wasn't the most conventional way to get to 27, but it's doable.
Yeah, and that's the last time we've gotten in double digits.
Yeah. Yeah, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was before the bye week, and then Texas.
Yeah.
But it feels like a millennium ago that happened, because of how this last weekend went.
Yeah.
Right,
Saturday will be fun.
We'll see what happens during this game. Oklahoma's kicking off an early game for the first time.
11:45. First time this year.
First time this season.
Although now we're back to back. We have an 11 o'clock against Ole Miss too.
If we can win, if we can somehow manage to win, though, I think there's a good shot that the last 3 games of the season are midday or night games. So Oklahoma needs to take care of business so we can get back to prime time. Let us know what you think about your score predictions. If Deion Burks potentially coming back makes a difference at all to this offense, just share your thoughts. Comment section down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, follow us, and all the links down in the description. We appreciate y'all watching. We'll see you next time.